I made $10,597 in 48 hours while only taking 2 trades. In today's video, I'm going to share with you how I was able to make that $10,000 while only risking $3,000. I'm going to show you the strategy to the live trading that was executed in real time. This is real trading with real results. Nothing in this video was manipulated or done in hindsight. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. So you guys might be wondering, what is this strategy that made me over $10,000 in 48 hours? The strategy that we're going to be focusing on today is fairly straightforward, but very effective if properly executed. So the strategy we're going to be talking about is based off of identifying higher time frame patterns. As you can see right here, I'm on the chart right here, and what we have is 3 types of patterns. We have reversal patterns, continuation patterns, and bilateral patterns. The main ones that we're going to be focusing on today is the continuation patterns. The continuation is how I personally like to trade. I like trading the break and retest. I like trading in trending markets. That's how I personally trade, and that's how I found the best trading opportunities to come, is when you're trading in a trend. When there's a trend on the higher time frames, what we have is liquidity, we have volatility, and most importantly, we have continuation. So there's a bunch of continuation patterns. As you can see right here, we currently have the falling wedge, we have the bullish rectangle, bullish pennant, rising wedge, bearish rectangle, bearish pennant. The main ones that I want to focus in on today is the bullish and bearish pennant. These are by far the easiest patterns to recognize on the higher time frames, and these are really the only ones you need to know, right? You can build a consistent strategy based off of bullish and bearish pennants. These are the only ones you need to trade if you want to trade continuation. These are the ones that we're going to be focusing on. There's also something called reversal patterns. We're not going to focus in on reversal patterns today. We're going to be mainly focusing on continuations of the trend. So right here, you can see we're going to be focusing on bullish and bearish pennants. Right here, we have what's called a bullish pennant, and what this consists of is a strong push in the upwards direction. When we have a strong push in the upwards direction and then we start consolidating, right, we form what's called a pennant. You can see price is getting in this nice tight range, right, forming this pennant, and then we finally have that break towards the upside where there's a continuation in the trend. And as you can see towards the downside, right, you have a big push towards the downside, you have consolidation, we're forming a pennant, and then you can see we have that break of the pennant for the continuation towards the downside. So these are the patterns that I like to look for on a daily basis. If I'm able to identify this type of pattern on the higher time frames, I will look for a continuation in the trend. And you might be wondering, what time frame should I be identifying these patterns on? And my favorite is the 1 hour and 4 hour time frame. These are by far the best higher time frames to look for these patterns on. It gives you a lot of information. You guys can use the pre-market data as well to identify these trends. So with that being said, let's go on to the top-down approach and exactly how we're able to use this to make money in the markets. So as you can see right here, there's essentially a 3-step checklist and exactly what we're going to be looking for on the top-down approach. So the main thing that we're going to be looking for, and we're going to start off on, is the daily time frame. So the daily time frame is the higher time frame that we're going to be starting off from, and the main reason we want to start off on the daily time frame is to identify the trend. So we want to identify the trend on the higher time frame. Is this bearish? Is this bullish? What type of order flow are we displaying? Are we consistently making higher highs, higher lows, lower highs, lower lows? What type of trend is forming on the daily time frame? After we find out what type of trend we have on the daily time frame, we're then going to go on to the hourly time frame to identify the pattern. We're going to be looking for bull and bear pennants. You guys can look for bull and bear flags, any type of continuation pattern that I mentioned earlier. And then finally, after we have identified the daily and hourly time frames, we then want to go on to the 1 and 5 minute time frame, and these time frames are used for entries. So we identify the higher time frames, we identify the patterns, and now we want to go on the lower time frames to look for potential entries. And the entry models that we're going to be using can be the break and retest, can be the opening range break and retest, previous day high, low break and retest. Depending on how the entry set up intraday, we're going to be using some sort of break and retest entry model, so we're able to capture the higher time frame pattern for continuation to either the upside or the downside. So With that being said, let's go into some of the examples that I have for us today. So you can see we're on my first example here, and this is on Apple Wednesday, July the 24th. And you can see right here, I ended up making over $4,600 on this trade, but you guys might see the big number here, the 4,600, but that's not what matters, right? What matters is how much I risked on this trade. As you can see, I only was risking $1,000 on this trade, and the risk to reward ratio ended up being a 4.43 risk to reward ratio. So what matters is the risk amount, and in this case I was risking $1,000 to make $4,000. That means if you were, for example, if you were looking to risk $100 on this trade, that means your reward would be over $440 per trade. I ended up risking $1,000, and that's why I ended up making over $4,600 on this trade. So now let's go right onto the higher time frames and exactly what I was looking at on Apple. As you can see right here, we're on the Apple daily time frame. This is essentially your key level, which is your 220, and you can see this is your previous resistance. Now we want to see this level act as support. So we have a big push towards the upside. Now we want to see a pullback back down towards this key area to be used as support for a move back towards the upside. And you see right here, we're now on the 1 hour time frame, and we ended up breaking key levels. As you can see right here, we end up having multiple touches. We end up breaking towards the downside, and now we're essentially using this previous support, using this as resistance. And what we have here as well, as you can see, we have that downtrend. We're breaking structure towards the downside, and now what we're forming is a bear pendant, a bear flag, whatever you want to call it, right? We're now in a downtrend, and now we'll be looking for continuation towards the downside. So based off of the higher time frame objective, right, we can pull back into the 220. Based off the 1 hour time frame, we have a bear flag or a bear pendant on the 1 hour time frame. Now we're going to be going on to the lower time frame to look for potential entry model. As you can see right here, we're now on the 5-minute chart. The key levels I'm going to have marked out is your key level being your 222, and I'm also going to have marked out your previous day low as well, and we'll play the tape coming into market open. So now you can see right off the bat, Apple is showing extreme relative weakness right off the bat. We're having a big push towards the downside. You can see we're underneath your previous day low. We're underneath key levels on the higher time frame as well, being that 220. So you can see so far we're breaking that bear flag towards the downside. So now what we'll be doing is looking for entry models on the lower time frames. So you can see right here we have a very bearish sentiment coming into the day. The key levels I'll be looking for now will be the order block. So you can see right here, I draw your 1 minute order block. We have key levels towards the downside as well. So I'll be looking for a retest of this order block if we want continuation towards the downside. So you can see right there, price ends up coming to our top of our order block, and you can see this is our confirmation candle as well. So I ended up entering in on this candle right here at 956 with a risk just to break above this order block, and my first profit targets was 220, which is your higher time frame key level. And then I was also looking for levels below, which was your 219. So I have these key levels and I drag it lower. As I play the tape here, you can see we have a nice push towards the downside. That's where I look to take my first scales. And now I'm looking for that key level below, which is your 119. And you can see right there, price finally hit our final profit target, which was our 219 level. Ended up being a super solid trade, never went into drawdown whatsoever, and it straight gravitated down towards our key levels. That was a perfect example of how to play your higher time frame pattern for continuation, and then going on to the lower time frames to look for entry models for continuations towards the downside. So with that being said, let's go on to the second example that I have for us today. So you can see my second example that I did was on the very next day. This was on Thursday, July the 25th, and then making over $5,900 on this trade setup. And the main thing I always tell you guys to focus on is not the dollar amount, it's how much I risk, right? What is your R multiple? And in this case, I was risking $1,800 to make over $5,000. So if you ask me, right, if you're risking $2,000 to make $6,000, that is a very solid risk reward ratio, and I will take that any day out of the week. So I ended up being a 3.16 risk reward ratio. This ended up being a very solid higher time frame trade that I'm going to show you guys right now. So you can see right here, we're on the daily time frame on the NASDAQ right here. You can see we ended up freshly breaking below key levels, which was your 19727 level. This was our break of structure level. So you can see now clearly the daily time frame has flipped bearish, and now we're going to be looking for a bearish sentiment and looking for bearish patterns on the 1 hour time frame to look to short towards the downside. So as you can see right here, now we go on to the 1 hour time frame. You can see that we ended up just tapping our key level, which was our higher time frame objective. You can see coming into market open, right, we're forming what's called a bear flag. You can see we have a very strong push towards the downside. Now what we have is a bear pennant, and now we're going to be looking for continuation towards the downside on NASDAQ after a big push towards the downside. Now we have consolidation on both sides. What we'll be doing is looking for continuation of the trend towards the downside on the NQ. And now we can go on to the lower time frames. So now I'm currently on the 5-minute chart, and I want to mark out key levels coming into market open. Right here, currently, this was your previous day low. So this is a very key level, your previous day low, and I'm also going to be marking out your pre-market low. So these are the two levels I'm going to have marked out. I'm going to have your previous day low marked out and your pre-market lows. If we are looking for any sort of move towards the downside, first we need to get below your previous day low if we want to see any sort of continuation down towards your pre-market low. So now we'll head on to the lower time frames and be patient and wait for something to set up. As you can see, we're coming into market open here, and this is a very key level, which is your previous day low. We'll see if we can get underneath that key level. So far, we're underneath that key level, which is your previous day low. So now we'll be looking for any sort of retest for a push towards the downside on the NASDAQ. You can see right here, we have no reaction around your previous day low so far, so there's no short position. So right here, you can see price end up coming all the way back down to your opening candle print. What I like to see is more weakness underneath your previous day low. As you can see right here, now we get back below your previous day low level. You can also see the 5-minute as well, right? You can see these upper wicks. So the 5-minute got underneath previous day low, and now you can see this upper wick signaling that sellers are stepping into the market. So now you can go back onto the 1-minute time frame, and we'll be looking for this area for a rejection for a continuation down towards your previous day low. As you play the tape here, you can see we end up getting tagged in right on this candle. You can see sellers are stepping in. That's exactly where I got in with a stop just to break above this key level. Targets being your 19060 level, which is your pre-market low. And then I was also looking for higher time frame objectives and below. As you can see on the daily time frame, I was looking for this key pivot low, which was your key level on the higher time frames. So now we can go back onto the chart, extend it out, and now we'll play this out. You can see price ended up taking out our key level. That's where I look to scale my first contract. And you can see right there, I finally exited my final contract at our key higher time frame objective for a very solid win on NQ for the day. I end up nailing these trades back to back, absolutely beautiful trades towards the downside. Both was using the higher time frame patterns, and then I went on to the lower time frames to look for my entry model. So with that being said, now I'm going to go on to the live session that I have for us today. As for the QQQ, I would actually be interested in a potential move towards the downside here on the Qs towards pre-market low. What I'd like to see on the Qs with the SPY as well is essentially you can see SPY end up coming back and retesting its order block. The Qs has room all the way down towards pre-market lows. So right here, you can see I identified the relative weakness in the Qs. You have that push down towards the downside right off the bat, breaking the opening candle range low. I talk about it having room towards their pre-market low as well. So there's plenty of room towards the QQQ towards the downside. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. So keep an eye on the QQQ here. You can either look for the QQQ puts or you can look for the futures contracts. We'll see the kind of the reaction we have around this key level for the Qs, right? Clear. Now it's underneath a previous day low as well. So it's underneath a previous day low. I'd like to see it kind of hold this area if price does want to gravitate more towards the downside. So we'll see the kind of the reaction here. A little bit of a pop on the Qs and SPY. So your previous day low is going to be your key area if price wants to gravitate lower towards the downside here, which is on the QQQ. It's your 462.51. That's your key area that you want to look for, essentially this area, and which kind of coincides with this 1-minute order block as well. Okay, I actually like the cues. After that, I like the reaction off its opening candle print. If it can pop back up and stay underneath, I like the 5 minute, right? The 5 minute is holding underneath previous day low, right? It's holding underneath previous day low on the 5 minute. So if it can pop back up towards 462.50 here, I'll like it for a short down towards low of day, and then previous day low, and no, sorry, not previous day. I like it for low of day, and I like it for it's at 8:30 low, and then also your pre-market low as well. Okay, I'm short the NQ off that key level, essentially your previous day low flip. Um, I like it for a move down towards low of day, and then your basically your low, your 8:30 low, and then your pre-market low as well on the QQQ. Right, I traded the futures contracts for the Qs. It's basically the same thing, the futures or the QQQ as well. My stops are just going to be basically a break above your opening candle print low right there. So as you can see right there, I just talked about entering my short position on the NASDAQ. I like this flip below your previous day low, and I like a hold of it. I like the 5 minute chart. And you can see we're rejecting off its opening range candle as well. So I ended up entering short, looking for low of day and your pre-market low, and I was looking for key levels below as well. So this is what I'm looking at on the futures contract, right? Reclaim underneath this, basically previous day low, right? Popped above it right here, got back below it. Like I like to see the Qs, right? Stay underneath this level for the NQ as well. And I like to see it gravitate lower towards essentially that 8:30 low, which is all the way down here. Down towards this level right here. That's what I like to see it gravitate towards. So you can see there, I ended up explaining my thesis on the NQ and the QQQ. They're exactly the same thing. I talked about that flip, and now I'm looking for that continuation towards the downside. Yeah, nice push on the Qs. I'm going to take some off here on the Qs. And then I'm going to leave the trailers to kind of just ride for a more move towards the downside. You can see, wow, look at the spillage on a lot of these names right here on the Qs, on a lot of the tech names for a move towards the downside, kind of with the Qs giving up a key level. So you can see right there, I ended up taking my first scales on the QQQ or NQ, where it was a very nice push towards the downside. We just ended up hitting pre-market low, and I mentioned that if we do give up this level and buyers do not step in, we can have a bigger flush towards the downside. So I took off half my position, and now I'm looking for more moves towards the downside. All right, next level on the NQ on the higher time frames is going to be this level right here, which is all the way down towards 18. I'm gonna really bar by bar. I'm not gonna have my stop up here because if we do end up reversing, we're just gonna most likely have a potential V-shaped recovery. So I'm just gonna basically kind of bar by bar my position towards the downside. Right here, yeah, I'm just gonna bar by bar my position towards it because if we do have a recovery, I kind of expect a potential V-shaped recovery. So I'm just gonna bar by bar it, see how the candles form, and then kind of just this would be my final target, which would be your 19.56 level. Or it'll either hit the final target, or I'll kind of get stopped out most likely at this. If it closes above this candle, I'll stop out. Right, I'm just gonna go bar by bar right here. As you can see right here, I'm trailing my position very tight. I'm looking for that final target, or I'm gonna get stopped out in profit. I mentioned that I'm expecting a V-shaped recovery, and as you can see later on, we actually end up having exactly that V-shaped recovery I talked about, but I end up scaling my contracts before then. Yeah, I'm all out there on the NQ. It could go lower now, but I'm all out there. That was my main target for the day. I also got a dip as well right now. So very solid trade, a nice opening play towards the downside. Um, yeah, hopefully some of you guys caught that. If you guys didn't, as I mentioned, right, there's always going to be more opportunity. So you can see right there, I end up exiting my full position on the NQ. Absolutely a banger position towards the downside. Hit all profit targets, ended up being an absolutely beautiful trade. Only risking 2,000 on this one to make $6,000. End up having a sweet move towards the downside. And as soon as I exited, I talked about that V-shaped recovery, and price ended up reversing back towards the upside later. So spot on analysis, beautiful live trading. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you did, I appreciate it if you guys drop me a like and sub. And I'll see you guys next week for a brand new video. Peace.